All right, Rob, it's over to you. Thanks so much.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Jamie. This will be fun. This is all about DMR hotspot options. Um, Jamie and I started on this adventure many months back, and this is sort of the culmination, anyway, of some of the things that we've learned along the way. And for those of you that are interested in learning about building or buying hotspots, we've just put together a small, short PowerPoint presentation. The agenda is basically going to be a disclaimer. How do you decide on what hotspot to get? We're going to cover what the hotspot building blocks are, all the components that make up a hotspot. And then basically we'll get to the meat of the show, and that's essentially the hotspot recommendations for those that want to buy or that want to build. So disclaimer, not associated with any manufacturer. These are just hotspots that I have built along the way, and some of those that Jamie has built, as well as Richard. So deciding on a hotspot, really it's based off of the functionality that you're interested in, how much money you want to spend, and whether or not you feel comfortable in assembling these things. So the functionality that hotspots offer are essentially simplex or duplex, or possibly portable as well. So the advantages of duplex is you essentially have the ability of capturing data from both time slots. One will be transmit, the other one will be receive. And so if you're on a busy talk group and you want to disconnect from it, having a duplex hotspot will allow you to do such a thing. The simplex hotspots offer you a big advantage of being very small in size, if you so chose. And they're also the least expensive. And then there are the hotspots, like the OpenSpot 3, that's also battery operated. And I think the battery life is about 8 hours. So those are sort of some of the functionalities these things offer. And depending on which one you want, will help guide your decisions. So here's roughly the cost of the hotspots. The lowest priced hotspots will run you about 50 bucks. Some assemblies required, and they're almost always simplex versions. The mid-priced hotspots run about $75. For some, you can have no assembly required. Some are simplex and duplex versions at that price. And on the higher priced hotspots, 100 bucks and up, no assemblies required. You also will have a variety of simplex, duplex versions. You get bigger displays. You can get some with touchscreen TFT displays as well. Obviously, they're bigger. Some are battery operated, again, like the OpenSpot 3. And it's the easiest, quickest way to get started is, essentially picking up something like the OpenSpot 3. And the other decision that you need to make is that if you're going to decide to build one yourself, you basically need to have a few tools in your arsenal. One is a micro SD card reader, and I will say that even if you bought a hotspot that was already pre-configured, getting the micro SD card reader is something you'd probably want to have anyway. And most of you, if you've got digital cameras, probably already have those things laying around. An assortment of small screwdrivers, essentially a Phillips or a flathead, and essentially having a soldering iron and knowing some basic soldering skills. I mean, you're talking about maybe 20 solder points is all you need to do to build a hotspot. And most of those are just connecting headers, and it's really nothing technical. fairly simple soldering skills, and also soldering removal if you do make a mistake. And obviously just a little bit of patience. Let's get on to hotspot building blocks. So these are the basic components that make up a hotspot. You've got an embedded computer like a Raspberry Pi Zero, and in this photograph here to the bottom, I don't know if you guys can see my mouse, but at the very, very bottom is a Raspberry Pi Zero, okay? This thing is fairly small in size. Probably the width of going across here is the size of a quarter. It's fairly small, and the length is probably about maybe 2 inches, would be my guess. So this thing's extremely tiny. I probably should have thrown a quarter in there to give you an idea of the size of this. The operating system is essentially Pi Star, which is a variant of Linux. Another component of the hat, and again, the operating system is what runs on the Raspberry Pi Zero. So it's just, for example, like Windows 10 or the Macintosh OS runs on the computer chip itself, the CPU. The hat is the UHF-VHF transceiver interface. And in this photograph, this top board that you see here is the hat. And it just plugs into the Raspberry Pi down at the bottom. Another component, basic component of a hotspot is a display. You can go from a headless, which means no display, to an OLED. And here's an example of an OLED display, is this really dark blue object here on top of the hat. And I think, obviously you can't read it, but this says startup because I had just plugged it in and took the photograph. And so this is the information that gets displayed. It's fairly small, but it'll show your call sign, who you're talking to, where they're located, etc. So it's a six line display. And then on some of the other hotspot you buy, you can actually get fairly large touchscreen interfaces, displays that can be as large as 7 inches or 10 inches in diameter. So these things get, not diameter, but diagonal. So these things get to be fairly large if you so chose. The micro SD card is needed, 16 gigs or larger, and that's essentially your hard drive where the operating system and all of your configuration information lives. Again, I had mentioned the micro SD card reader, the read-write, and it's got a USB interface that plugs into your computer. You'll need a power supply, which is just a micro USB wall wart. For example, this little device here, this hotspot that I'm showing here is fairly low powered, so you don't need a very large amperage wall wart. But there are the Raspberry Pi 3s and the 4s will consume a lot more power, and if you decide to go with a touchscreen interface, you'll have to pick up one that carries about 2.5 amps, and we'll get to that. And the last component of a hotspot is just an enclosure. So all of these things make up a hotspot. So let's cover the details of some of the basic components. Here's a picture of the Raspberry Pi Zero. It's the smallest form factor you're going to find, and it's cheap. It's about $10 for this device. You can spend $4 more and get a header, and you can see these headers here. If you, for the most part, I buy the Pi Zero W, and I solder basically a header here that basically has 8 pins, as well as another header over here that has 8 pins. And so at this point, you've only got 16 solder joints that you need to make, or solder connections, I should say, you need to make. All of these other pins in the middle are not used, these header pins. So if you were building it yourself, it would just be 16 solder joints here, and the pins that are usually come with the displays. So everything that, if you buy a display, they typically will have the headers on it. So you could save yourself $4 if you chose to pick up the Zero. Again, the WH version has the header for $4 more. Jumping up in terms of performance, you can pick up a Raspberry Pi 3B or 3B Plus. It's 3 times the size of the Pi Zero. It consumes more power, but it's only 35 bucks. The beauty of the Raspberry Pi 3Bs or 3B Pluses is that they boot a lot faster than the Pi Zero. So if you're doing any sort of troubleshooting, having a 3B is really amazing. It boots up probably in about 15 to 20 seconds, whereas the Pi Zero will take just over 2 minutes to boot up. And I've included the link for you guys if you're interested to pick up these Raspberry Pis. These are the cheapest places that I've found to buy the Pis from, Adafruit or Vilros.com. The operating system, you can pick it up from pistar.uk. Here's the current version of the Pistar operating system. And the beauty of this is it's free. So if you guys are interested, this is where you go to download the operating system, and it costs you nothing. Here are the typical hats that essentially plug into your Raspberry Pis. You can pick up a Jumbo Spot version 1.7. It's 15 bucks, $15.25. And all you need to do is go to Amazon or eBay and query MMDVM hotspot V1.7. And you'll find them for about $15. And there's the hat. And these are the headers that I spoke about. So basically, you buy the hat. The headers come with it, as well as an antenna. So in this case, do you see this dark area right here? Well, they've actually already soldered the header to this board, but the board is upside down, so the headers are sticking out, down below the board. And so basically, you'd have to make solder connections here, solder connections there. This little gold device is really the antenna connection, and that goes right here. So on the back of the board, you'd have to solder 4 pins, and then this antenna screws into the top of this this joint. So that's really all that is required to get this hat essentially ready to be plugged into your Raspberry Pis. And this version down here is an N5 BOC. I can't speak enough of this guy's work. His hat, it's made in the US. He's an electrical engineer from, I think it's Dallas, Texas or Austin, Texas. I don't remember which. This board is his simplex board. It's $79. If you guys can see this little black device down here, that's a ceramic antenna. So there's nothing protruding from the top of the board. It's you can just take his hat, plug it in, and essentially it's the antenna is built into this device. Super sweet. And if you want something very, very compact, this guy's board are amazing. Now we're moving on to a hat that's a duplex version. Costs a little bit more. You can search again, Amazon or eBay for a duplex hotspot. Always try and pick up the 1.3, which is the latest. It runs, instead of 15 bucks, it's 25 bucks, right? And again, the N5 BOC sells a beautiful design. Like this thing's got so many features. It's extremely stable. It has a built-in voltage regulator, so instead of picking the power supply from the Raspberry Pi's power supply, it basically has its own voltage regulator. This guy's done a great job, and you'll see nothing but rave reviews for his hats. And this, again, is the N5 BOC hat, duplex version. These are what they call OLED displays. They're $5.50 on Amazon or eBay. And you can just query this. These guys plug into the Raspberry Pi, or the hats, I should say, and you just solder them in. Again, another 4 pins to solder, and you can have your own display. These things come in different colors. I've just shown white and blue, but they come in yellows, reds, greens, and they're quite neat. If you wanted a larger display, you can spend $9.50 and get a 1.3 inch display. And again, this is how you query for it on Amazon or eBay. If you want to get really fancy, you can go to the touchscreen displays that have just amazing graphics. I hope Jamie will, at the end of this presentation, show you some of the work that he's done on his. He's gotten to the point where now he can, he's got a Seahawks logo. He's got some of the Pacific RDMR groups banner, and it's pretty amazing what you can do with these things. The 2.5 inch or the 2.4 inch Nexion display is about 30 bucks. I would highly recommend, if you guys want this beautiful screen, to get the 3.5 inch. And the reason is there are so many people doing custom displays for these, and they share them. So if you wanted different look and feel of what your hotspot will show when you're in a QSO, this 3.5 inch enhanced display for 39 bucks, you can have quite a variety of them. I've picked up 2 of these until I realized I should have gotten a 3.5. And in fact, I just ordered my 3.5. It just arrived. Here it is, but I have not built it yet. Again, you just query eBay and Amazon for these part numbers. Again, Nexion comes with, in all of these sizes, it just goes up, I think, to 7 or 10 inches if you so desire. But then again, if you want a hotspot that's got a 7-inch screen, it's a pretty large size. Another thing you're going to need for your hotspots are micro SD cards. They run $5 to $6. Here are some part numbers. I've used these. They work great. Again, minimum size. You will see documentation saying 8 gigabytes or up, but what we're finding is that the Pi-Star operating system is larger than 8 gigs. And so we ran into a bunch of problems originally because we had 8 gig cards. So for $5 or $6, get the 16 gigs. And I recommend you get 2 of these per hotspot. The display to configure the Nexion display requires a hotspot. And even if you don't have the Nexion, what would be nice is once you get your hotspot configured, to have another one as a spare, sort of an image of your hotspot, so that in case something goes wrong with your micro SD card, you can just take the other one, plug it in, and off you go. Here's what the card reader looks like. It takes different versions of these SD cards. This is a Ugreen. It's 16 bucks. If you have one, I mean, most people have one. I have 3 or 4 of them, but this is the one I've been using on this project, and it's worked just great. And it's $16, so you can find them on Amazon or eBay. Again, the power supply. If you're going with a Raspberry Pi 3B, or the B Plus or the 4, pick up a 2.5 amp power supply. It's $7.50 from Adafruit. And then again, finally, you've got your enclosure. I love this company. It's a company down in Tacoma, Washington. It's called C4 Labs. And here's the URL, c4labs.com. They make amazing cases. I mean, look how beautiful this is. Pretty much every design, every hotspot I've built, I prefer to get a C4 Labs case. This one's 19 bucks. This is essentially designed for the Pi Zero W or the WH and one of these simplex hotspots. And imagine if you've got, for example, the N5 BOC hotspot simplex for 75 bucks. This antenna is no longer needed. The antenna will be built into the board, and so basically you've got this tiny, 1 inch by 2.5 inch device. It's super cool. And if you want to go on the cheap side, there's a metal case on eBay for about 10 bucks. Here's how you find it. Just query eBay for these things. And basically no tools needed to open it up. You just pop the cover off and pop it back on. Here are some more enclosures. Again, C4 Labs sells this case for the N5 BOC, and this is what it looks like. Again, gorgeous. And again, C4 Labs has many different flavors of these in terms of colors. You can buy them in neon green or blue or wood trim. Mine is essentially a clear case, but they have many, many options in terms of the look, you know, the color varieties that you can pick up with this hotspot. And here's a larger C4 Labs case. I've included the part numbers for you as well. In this diagram, it's a 2.4-inch Nexion display. It runs about $50. And this is what it looks like. And it includes the touchscreen display as well. So that kind of gives you an idea of some of your enclosures. And then I continue on with, this is the duplex version of the C4 Labs, the 2.4-inch. And, oh, I'm sorry. And here, for example, it's got a touchscreen. For example, there's a reboot button. There's a shut off button that I can just touch, and it can turn off my hotspot. Again, C4 Labs does an incredible job. It too is about $50. And here are the two antennas for the duplex version. And this is the metal case that I was talking about, the $9 zoom spot. And this is what it looks like in operation, where you've got your little 1-inch OLED screen that's got text. You've just got to have pretty good eyes to read it. But having a display, my experience is, while you can go headless, meaning don't even worry about buying a display, I found that the display, even something as small as this, to be extremely valuable, because as soon as the Pi-Star boots up, it'll show you the IP address of this device, and you can use that IP address to go to your web browser and then start configuring it to your heart's content. So I would recommend, spending the $9 or whatever the OLED price is to get a display. And here we get to the essentially the meat of the matter is, what kind of hotspot recommendations, what can we recommend to you in terms of building or buying? For those of you that want the easiest, simplest, out of the box, it just works option is to pick up this OpenSpot 3. And there's the URL for it. It just works. It's super easy. It's got a built-in battery. Again, 8-hour life. It uses the USB-C plug to recharge it, which is what my Samsung phone uses. It's a simplex device, and it runs you about $300. But this is probably the easiest get on the air solution that you could possibly get in terms of getting a hotspot and having it work. Again, you pay for it, right? $300. These have worked super well. Don't let the low price fool you. You can pick them off of eBay or Amazon for about $70. They're all built. Simplex, you need a micro USB power to plug it in, and here is the micro USB plugged into this device that powers it up. I'd probably get a wall wart, so you don't need to have your computer plugged in all the time to power this thing up. It does not draw a lot of power, therefore, you don't need a 2.5 amp wall wart to power this thing. And again, the hat is UHF VHF, meaning that you could use either UHF or VHF to communicate with this hotspot. And again, it runs about $70. Now, if you were to build that identical hotspot, if money was a factor, then you could build this identical board that's already been built for you for $45, 45 to 50, and it's the same device. And these are all of the components that you need. You need the hotspot hat, you need the micro SD card, the Pi Zero, which I showed earlier, which was just the Raspberry Pi W or the WH, and a metal case for $5, and some soldering skills. So this is the cheapest thing, and I can tell you without a doubt they work, and they work very well. Here's the other build option that I preferred to get, was I bought the N5 BOC Simplex hat, or you can still buy the Jumbo Spot. This case, this C4 Labs case works with both of them. And these are all the parts I've included in terms of a bill of material. Here's the part number for the C4 Labs case. Again, 19 bucks. By the time you're done, if you decide to build the N5BOC, you're going to run about 130 to 140, including shipping. Or if you pick up the Chinese jumbo spot, you can do it for about 70 bucks, including shipping. And it would be in this case. So this is either the jumbo spot or the N5BOC hotspot. The next is a jumbo spot, which is the same $15 simplex hat. You still need the micro SD cards. And in this case, this is a Raspberry Pi 3B or the 3B Plus. It's 35 bucks. You notice it's a lot larger. It's about 3 times the size of the Raspberry Pi Zero. You've got a nice case now, which is 67 bucks, and the screen is included. And this is the 3.5-inch touchscreen display. And it's just absolutely gorgeous. I mean, I don't remember the resolution or the number of pixels, but it's a really, really beautiful display. Power supply, again, 750, because you're going to need that 2.5 amp supply. And it'll run you about 150 bucks, including shipping. This is the duplex version of the N5BOC. Again, the hat's about 109 bucks. You still need all of the remainder of these items. Here's the C4 Labs case for 19 bucks. It'll run you about 160, 170. The one thing I can tell you about this device is I have it actually in my car, and my car is in my garage. My house is a fairly large home, Rambler, and this device, I can actually leave it inside of my car, and from anywhere in my house, I have my Anytone 878 running at 1 watt, and I'm able to hit this device and communicate without issue. And so the design of this, the range of this, the antenna spacings are more likely optimized for the UHF frequencies that are involved in this. So this guy here works. It's a superb piece of engineering. Whereas I can tell you the simplex boards that I've got, the the little Chinese hotspots, do not work reliably well at that distance. You've got to be a little bit closer in. I'd say about 20 feet to 30 feet on low power, or I start getting larger bit error rates for those cheaper hotspots. So anyway, enough of the N5BOC work. This again is a close-up of the 3.5-inch case. This is what it looks like. It's got off button off and reboots, and again, you should see Jamie's design. It's just absolutely gorgeous. He's customized this user interface. These Nexion screens are just adorable. And again, it's about the same price for a duplex version of this, with the jumbo spot, the $35 hats that you can order off of eBay. And that's pretty much it in terms of what I've got to show you guys. And if you've got any questions, feel free to ask. You might have to unmute yourself.
So give me 1 second. I will stop the recording. Thank you so much, Rob, for this presentation.